There's a certain kind of quiet that only exists in the deep woods of America, a silence so profound you can almost hear the whispers of the past. Picture a lone campfire, its flames casting long, dancing shadows against the ancient trees, while somewhere in the distance, an owl calls out a question into the night. It's in these moments, suspended between the familiar and the unknown, that the old stories begin to stir. For centuries, long before highways and streetlights carved their way across the landscape, people gathered in the dark and shared tales not just for entertainment, but to explain the unexplainable, to give a shape to the shadows and a name to the fears that lingered just beyond the edge of the firelight. These stories became the fabric of local legend, passed down from grandparent to grandchild, a chilling and captivating oral history woven into the very soil of the nation. That rich tapestry of myth and mystery is what we're exploring today. Beyond the pages of standard history books which recount dates and political battles lies an entirely different America, one populated by spectral figures, mysterious creatures, and places where the normal rules of reality seem to bend and break. This is the America of folklore, a land where every misty swamp, every lonely mountain pass, and every forgotten backroad holds the potential for an encounter with something truly extraordinary. These aren't just simple ghost stories, they are profound reflections of our collective anxieties, our wonders, and the enduring human need to find magic and meaning in the world around us, even when that magic carries a hint of danger. So pull up a chair and lean in closer to the fire, because we are about to embark on a coast-to-coast journey to uncover 33 of the strangest American folklore stories ever told. We will traverse cursed lands where settlers vanished without a trace, sail alongside phantom ships doomed to eternally patrol fog-shrouded coasts, and come face to face with cryptids, those elusive beings that science has yet to catalog, from the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest to the murky swamps of the Deep South. This is an expedition into the heart of the nation's deepest secrets, a collection of narratives so bizarre and chilling, they will make you look at the familiar map of the United States in a thrilling and unsettling new light. Are you ready to discover what truly lies hidden in the forgotten corners of America? The journey begins now. Our journey into the bizarre begins in a place that feels suspended in time, the secluded glens and misty hollows along the Hudson River. Here, in the quiet Dutch settlement of Tarrytown, lies the enchanting and eerie valley of Sleepy Hollow. It's a landscape deeply touched by a drowsy, dreamy influence, where the air itself seems to hum with superstition, and the local inhabitants are prone to seeing visions and hearing music and voices in the air. This is the perfect breeding ground for a legend, and from this fertile soil sprang one of the most enduring specters in all of American folklore, the Headless Horseman. The tale, immortalized by Washington Irving in 1820, centers on the lanky and superstitious schoolmaster Ichabod Crane. Ichabod is a man of considerable appetite, not just for food, but for the local ghost stories he devours with a fearful fascination. He finds himself vying for the hand of the wealthy Katrina Van Tassel, a competition that pits him against the village hero, the boisterous Brom Bones. On his fateful ride home from a harvest party at the Van Tassel farm, his mind is haunted by the story he heard that very night, the legend of the Headless Horseman. This wasn't just any ghost, this was a Hessian soldier, a mercenary who fought for the British during the Revolutionary War. According to the lore, his head was carried away by a cannonball during a nameless battle, and his restless spirit now galloped through the night, desperately searching for his lost head, often said to use it as a bowling ball. As Ichabod rides through the increasingly sinister woods, every rustle of a leaf and every creak of a branch amplifies his terror. Then he sees it, a dark, towering figure on a powerful horse keeping pace with him. And worst of all, where its head should be, there is nothing but empty space. The spectral chase that follows is a masterpiece of mounting dread, a desperate flight through the dark where the silence is broken only by the thunder of hooves and Ichabod's own pounding heart. The climax occurs at the bridge near the old Dutch burying ground, the one place local legend says the horseman cannot cross as it becomes powerless upon reaching hallowed ground. In a final, terrifying moment, the horseman hurls his severed head, striking Ichabod Crane and knocking him from his horse. The next morning, all that is found are Ichabod's hat, a shattered pumpkin, and the tracks of his galloping horse. The schoolmaster himself is never seen again. What makes this story so compelling is its brilliant ambiguity. Irving leaves us with a tantalizing question. Was this a genuine supernatural encounter or an elaborate hoax orchestrated by Brom Bones to scare off his rival? The smashed pumpkin found at the scene certainly suggests a human trickster at work. Yet, the enduring power of the Headless Horseman lies in that very uncertainty. He is more than just a ghost, he is a literal embodiment of a severed past. The Hessian soldier represents the lingering trauma of the Revolutionary War, a brutal conflict fought on American soil, whose ghosts were not so easily laid to rest. The legend gave a frightening, tangible form to the anxieties of a young nation still grappling with the bloody cost of its own independence. From a possible prank by a local bully, the story has evolved into the quintessential American ghost story, a timeless narrative about fear, the power of suggestion, and the shadows that history casts long after the battle is over. But if the legend of Sleepy Hollow uses ambiguity to haunt us, the terror of the Pine Barrens is brutally direct. Travel south from the Hudson Valley into the heart of southern New Jersey, and you will find a vast, sprawling wilderness known as the Pine Barrens. This is a million-acre ocean of dense, stunted pine trees, dark, tea-colored cedar water, and deep, trackless sand roads. It's a place of eerie quiet and profound isolation, a landscape that seems to resist civilization itself. And for nearly 3 centuries, the locals have whispered about the thing that calls this desolate expanse home, a creature of pure nightmare known as the Jersey Devil. The origin story is as chilling as the beast itself. The most common version dates back to 1735 and a woman named Mother Leeds. It's said she was already the mother of 12 children and upon discovering she was pregnant with a 13th, raised her hands to the stormy sky and cursed the unborn child, crying out that it would be a devil. On a dark and stormy night, the child was born, appearing at first to be a normal baby. But then, before the horrified eyes of the midwife and family, the infant underwent a grotesque transformation. Its body contorted, sprouting leathery bat-like wings, its legs twisting and ending in the cloven hooves of a goat, while its head elongated into a horse-like or reptilian shape, complete with piercing red eyes. With an unearthly, shrieking scream, the creature flapped its wings, levitated up the chimney, and escaped into the pines, vanishing into the darkness from whence it came. The description of the Jersey Devil is a terrifying patchwork of different animals, a biological impossibility that fuels its horror. Witnesses describe a creature about 3 or 4 feet tall, with a body resembling a kangaroo, allowing it to leap great distances. Its wingspan can reach an alarming width, and its most famous feature is its cry, a blood-curdling scream that is neither bird nor wolf, a sound that cuts through the silence of the pines and freezes the blood. For generations, it was a local phantom blamed for slaughtered livestock, strange noises in the night, and the uneasy feeling of being watched in the deep woods. But in January of 1909, the Jersey Devil exploded from regional legend into a full-blown national panic. For one incredible week, sightings of the creature were reported not just across New Jersey, but in Pennsylvania and Delaware as well. It was a wave of mass hysteria that gripped the entire region. Schools and factories closed down as people were too terrified to go outside after dark. Police officers claimed to have seen it perched on rooftops. Trolley cars in Camden were reportedly attacked by a winged creature. Most chillingly, after a fresh snowfall, townspeople from Bristol, Pennsylvania, to Haddon Heights, New Jersey, awoke to find a set of mysterious, cloven hoofprints trailing through the snow, appearing and disappearing impossibly, as if the creature had leapt from rooftop to rooftop. These prints were photographed and investigated, with skeptics claiming they were made by a hoaxer with a heated stamp. But for those who saw them, they were undeniable proof that the devil was real and walking among them. The legacy of the Jersey Devil is one of persistent, tangible fear. Unlike the ghostly horseman, the devil is a physical, predatory presence. Its story is deeply tied to the specific terrors of its environment, the pine barrens themselves. This is a place where people have genuinely vanished, a landscape so vast and disorienting that it can hide anything. The legend can be seen as a manifestation of the fear of the untamed wilderness, a warning against venturing too far into the unknown. It also carries echoes of societal anxieties, the cursed 13th child, a symbol of unwanted burdens and the fear of the monstrous birth. Today, the Jersey Devil remains an official state symbol, a unique and terrifying part of New Jersey's identity, a reminder that some American mysteries are not content to stay in the past but continue to flap their wings in the present. Leaving the ancient woods of the Pine Barrens, we travel inland to a small, quiet town nestled along the banks of the Ohio River. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in the mid-1960s, was the picture of American normality, a community built on industry and close-knit family ties. But over 13 months, beginning in November 1966, this unassuming town became the epicenter of a paranormal panic so intense it would forever be linked to one of the most terrifying and enigmatic figures in modern folklore, the Mothman. This wasn't a story passed down for centuries. It was a phenomenon that unfolded in real time, witnessed by dozens of credible citizens, and it culminated in a real-world tragedy that forever sealed the creature's legend as a harbinger of doom. It began on a cold November night near the remains of the West Virginia Ordnance Works, a former World War II munitions plant locals called the Tinty area. Two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallette, were driving through the shadowy, isolated network of roads when their headlights caught a staggering sight. Standing near the gate was a massive figure, taller than a man, with wings folded against its back. As they stared in disbelief, the creature unfolded its wings, which spanned an estimated 10 feet, and took to the air with a powerful, unnerving silence. The most chilling detail, one repeated in nearly every subsequent sighting, was its eyes, large, hypnotic, and glowing with a fierce red light. Terrified, the couple sped away, only to have the creature pursue them, keeping pace with their car even at speeds approaching 100 miles per hour. They reported it to the local sheriff, and the story, splashed across the front page of the Point Pleasant Register, ignited a firestorm. What followed was a wave of sightings that gripped the town in a state of sustained fear. Dozens of people came forward with their own encounters. A fireman described seeing it. A contractor watched it soar over a field. Witnesses consistently described the same bizarre anatomy: a gray, man-sized shape, a lack of a discernible head, with the red eyes seemingly set into its shoulders, and a haunting, graceful flight that defied the flapping of a bird. The local press, searching for a name, dubbed it Mothman, inspired by a villain from the popular Batman television series. But as the sightings multiplied, the phenomenon grew stranger. Residents began reporting visits from mysterious, pale-faced men in black suits who drove vintage cars and showed an unnerving interest in the Mothman events, asking bizarre questions and seeming to intimidate witnesses into silence. These men in black added a layer of conspiratorial dread, suggesting that the creature was more than a simple monster. It was something being monitored, perhaps even covered up. For 13 months, the Mothman was a terrifying presence in Point Pleasant. Then, on December 15, 1967, at the peak of the Christmas rush, tragedy struck. The Silver Bridge, a vital artery connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio, was packed with evening commuters. Without warning, the 40-year-old suspension bridge shuddered and collapsed into the icy waters of the Ohio River, taking 46 cars and trucks with it. 46 people lost their lives in one of the deadest bridge failures in American history. In the aftermath, the connection was instantly made. The Mothman sightings had ceased just before the disaster. Many residents became convinced that the creature had not been a malevolent force, but a terrible omen, a spectral warning of the impending catastrophe that went unheeded. This interpretation forms the core of the Mothman's enduring power. Was it a cryptid, an unknown species of large owl or sandhill crane misidentified in the panic of the moment? Or was it something else entirely, a psychic projection of the town's collective anxiety, a manifestation of the stress from the Cold War era given a terrifying form? The legend forces us to confront the unsettling idea of precognition, the possibility that a looming disaster can cast a shadow backwards in time, appearing to sensitive individuals as a symbol of what is to come. Unlike the Jersey Devil, which is a creature of pure folklore, the Mothman is inextricably linked to a specific, verifiable tragedy, making its story not just a spooky tale, but a profound and heartbreaking mystery about the nature of warning signs and the fragility of life. While the Mothman was a fleeting, sky-bound omen over West Virginia, our next story takes us into the very heart of a southern home, where the haunting was not a warning of a single event but a years-long campaign of psychological and physical terror. We travel now to the rich, rolling farmlands of Robertson County, Tennessee, in the early 1800s to the homestead of the Bell family. Their ordeal, known as the Bell Witch haunting, is not merely a ghost story. It stands as arguably the most extensively documented poltergeist case in American history, a terrifying saga witnessed by scores of upstanding citizens, including a future president of the United States. The disturbances began subtly around 1817. John Bell, a respected farmer and elder in the local Baptist church, first noticed something amiss when he saw a strange animal lurking in his cornfield, a creature with the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit that vanished when he tried to shoot it. Soon after, the family started hearing sounds, knocking on the doors and walls, frantic scratching along the floorboards, and the sound of rats gnawing on the bedposts, though no rats were ever found. But these noises were just the opening act. The entity quickly grew bolder and more intelligent. It began pulling the bed covers off the children as they slept, slapping their faces, and even snatching the pillows from under their heads. The focus of this torment soon zeroed in on two members of the family, the patriarch John Bell and his youngest daughter, 12-year-old Betsy. As the months turned into years, the spirit found its voice. It would engage in long, articulate conversations with the family and the growing number of curious visitors who came to witness the phenomenon. It could quote scripture verbatim, sing hymns in a sweet, ethereal voice, and then, in an instant, switch to a guttural, profanity-laced rage. It claimed to be the spirit of a local woman named Kate Batts, a neighbor with whom John Bell had a disputed land deal, and thus it became known far and wide as the Bell Witch. The entity displayed a disturbing duality in its affections and hatreds. It professed a deep fondness for John's wife, Lucy, often singing to her to ease her distress. But for John and Betsy, its hatred was venomous. It would pinch and scratch Betsy relentlessly, leaving visible bruises, and its primary goal seemed to be the utter destruction of John Bell. The Bell Witch became a macabre local attraction. People traveled from miles around to experience the phenomenon, and the entity seemed to relish the audience. It would hold court, debating theology with visiting preachers and accurately predicting future events. Its fame grew to such an extent that it even drew the attention of one of the most formidable men in America, General Andrew Jackson, the hero of the Battle of New Orleans and a future president. Intrigued by the stories, Jackson assembled a party of men and set out from Nashville to investigate the Bell farm himself. According to the accounts, Jackson's expedition had a confident start. He is famously quoted as saying, "I have no fear of witches or ghosts as they approach the property, but the bell which had other plans." Before Jackson's caravan could even reach the Bell house, their wagon suddenly stopped dead in the road, its wheels stubbornly stuck as if cemented in place. The men pushed and pulled to no avail. Then a voice echoed from the surrounding woods, a disembodied taunt that declared, "All right, General, let the wagon move on." As soon as the words were spoken, the wagon lurched forward with ease. That first night at the Bell home was one of pure chaos for Jackson and his men. The air was filled with the sounds of slapping, fighting, and screaming. Furniture was overturned, and the men themselves were slapped and pulled from their beds. By morning, a thoroughly spooked General Andrew Jackson and his entire party had fled the premises, reportedly vowing never to return. The haunting reached its tragic climax in December 1820. John Bell's health, long deteriorating under the spirit's relentless assault, failed completely. He fell into a coma-like state. One morning, his son, John Jr., went to give him his medicine but found the bottle strangely empty. The witch's voice cackled through the house, boasting that it had poisoned the vial. A small amount of the mysterious liquid was given to a cat, which immediately went into convulsions and died. John Bell never woke up. With his death, the witch celebrated, singing and laughing drunkenly at his funeral. The entity's activity gradually lessened after that, though it returned for one final, chilling prophecy to the family, accurately predicting the Civil War and the fates of various family members before vowing to return in 7 years. It did make a brief reappearance, speaking directly to John Bell Jr., and then, as mysteriously as it arrived, it was gone. The legacy of the bell which endures because it transcends a simple ghost story. It is a complex narrative of alleged grievance, a spirit that claimed a very human motive for its vengeance. The case is remarkable for the sheer volume of first-hand testimony and the credibility of the witnesses involved. It forces us to confront a haunting that was not a silent specter but an intelligent, interactive, and deeply malevolent presence that physically and psychologically tortured a family for years in full view of their community. It is a story that blurs the lines between folklore and documented history, leaving behind an unsettling question. Was this the result of a profound family trauma, a case of mass hysteria, or evidence of a supernatural intelligence so powerful it could drive away a future president? The land in Tennessee remains, and the legend of the bell, which continues to be one of America's most disturbing and enduring paranormal puzzles. The journey now takes us from the intimate, domestic terror of the Bell family farm into the embrace of a vast and primordial wilderness, a place where the very ground seems untrustworthy and the air hangs thick with deception. Straddling the border of Virginia and North Carolina lies the Great Dismal Swamp, a 500,000-acre expanse of murky water, twisted cypress trees draped in moss, and a silence so deep it feels like a physical presence. For centuries, this has been a place of refuge for those fleeing society, from indigenous communities to marooned, enslaved people who established hidden settlements deep within its impenetrable reaches. It is a landscape that naturally breeds stories of mystery, but none is more puzzling than the legend of the Grand Hotel that wasn't supposed to be there at all. Imagine a traveler in the late 19th or early 20th century, making a difficult journey along the old, poorly maintained roads that skirted the swamp's edge. A sudden storm rolls in, turning the track to mud and reducing visibility to near zero. Through the sheets of rain and the rising tendrils of evening fog, a light flickers in the distance. Hoping for shelter, the traveler follows it and is astonished to find not a simple trapper's cabin, but a magnificent multi-story hotel, seemingly conjured from the mist itself. It stands as an island of civilization in the heart of the wild, with warm light glowing from its windows and the faint sound of music and laughter spilling from its doors. Welcoming staff greet the weary guest, offering a comfortable room, a hot meal, and the promise of a safe, dry night's sleep. the experience inside is one of surreal normality. The hotel is opulently furnished with fine draperies, polished wood, and other guests mingling in the common areas. Everything appears perfectly real, a bastion of comfort against the oppressive wilderness outside. The traveler retires for the night, lulled to sleep by the unfamiliar feeling of safety. But dawn brings a cruel and disorienting reversal. The guest awakens not in a soft bed, but on the damp, cold ground tangled in roots and leaves. The Grand Hotel is gone. There are no foundations, no scattered bricks, no evidence that any structure ever stood on that spot. The only remnants are the memory of warmth and the chilling, pervasive fog of the swamp, leaving the individual to question everything they experienced. Was it an elaborate dream, a feverish hallucination brought on by swamp gases, or had they truly been the guest of a phantom establishment that existed only for a single night? This legend taps into a profound and universal fear, the fear of losing one's grip on reality. The terror of the dismal swamp hotel isn't about a monster that attacks the body, but an experience that undermines the mind. It plays on the vulnerability of being alone in an immense, isolating environment where the senses can be deceived. The swamp itself, with its miasmatic fog and shifting landscapes, is the perfect accomplice in this deception, a place where the line between the real and the imagined has always been notoriously thin. The story functions as a cautionary tale about the dangers of the unknown, warning that even the most welcoming sanctuary can be an illusion, and that the wilderness holds powers beyond simple physical danger. Some folklorists suggest the tale may have roots in distorted memories of real hunting lodges or logging camps that operated in the swamp's periphery during its more industrious periods. A traveler might have genuinely found shelter in such a place, only to have the memory exaggerated and mythologized over years of retelling. Others propose a more symbolic interpretation. The vanishing hotel could represent the elusive promise of the American frontier itself, the dream of a comfortable life in a harsh land that often vanished upon closer inspection, leaving only the harsh reality of the struggle for survival. Whatever its origin, the story of the hotel that disappears by morning remains a haunting testament to the power of a place to play tricks on the human mind, making the great dismal swamp a permanent resident in the landscape of American mystery. From the deceptive mists of the dismal swamp, we travel north to the rugged timberlands of Wisconsin, where the folklore takes on a distinctly more muscular and mischievous character. Here, in the heart of America's logging country during the late 19th century, tales were spun as tall as the white pines themselves. It was an era of brawny men and campfire bragging, a perfect environment for the birth of a creature like the hodag. Described as the ultimate predator, the hodag was said to be a monstrous beast, roughly the size of a large bear, with the head of a fearsome frog, the face of a giant elephant, thick, short legs adorned with enormous claws, a long tail tipped with spear-like points, and an arched back covered in sharp, menacing spikes. According to the lumberjacks of Rhinelander, its favorite food was pure, unadulterated fear, though white bulldogs were also said to be a preferred snack. The creature's origin story was as wild as its appearance, born from the ashes of a cremated ox. The tale went that a particularly vengeful lumberjack, after years of mistreatment by his boss, finally snapped and killed the man's prized ox with an axe. In a fit of guilt or perhaps further spite, he burned the carcass, and from the pyre emerged the hodag, a literal embodiment of his rage and a new terror for the North Woods. For years, the hodag was a staple of campfire stories, a mythical menace used to keep children in line or spook newcomers. But the legend was catapulted into national fame by a man named Eugene Shepard, a well-known and colorful prankster, surveyor, and local promoter. In 1896, Shepard announced to the world that he and a band of brave companions had not only located the beast's lair, but had captured a living hodag. He claimed the capture required a dramatic battle, using a long pole with a chloroform-soaked sponge to subdue the fiery-tempered creature. Shepard even produced a sensational photograph of the supposed beast, a horrifying, spiky monstrosity held on a chain by its captors. News spread like wildfire, drawing reporters and curiosity seekers from across the country to Rhinelander to see the marvel for themselves. Shepard displayed the creature at the county fair, where it became a massive sensation. The hodag, however, was a spectacular hoax, a cleverly crafted model made of wood, wires, and ox hides, animated by wires manipulated by Shepard's associates hidden behind a canvas. He eventually confessed to the prank, but by then, the hodag had already cemented its place in Wisconsin's identity. Unlike the frightening Jersey Devil, the hodag's legacy is one of pure, unadulterated fun, a testament to the tall tale tradition and the cleverness of a local character who put his town on the map through sheer imagination. Yet, if the hodag represents the boisterous, boastful side of American folklore, then its counterpart from the hemlock forests of Pennsylvania offers a far more delicate and heartbreaking contrast. While Wisconsin had its fearsome, spiky beast, Pennsylvania gave birth to the most pathetic and sorrowful creature in all of cryptid lore, the squonk. This elusive being is a legend of pure melancholy, a creature so consumed by its own perceived ugliness that it spends its entire life in a state of perpetual weeping. Said to inhabit the remote woods of the Allegheny region, the squonk is described as a small, woefully misshapen animal with loose, sagging, warty skin covered in blemishes and moles, so grotesque to its own eyes that it cannot bear to be seen. Its name is said to be an onomatopoeia for the sad, squelching sound it makes as it shuffles through the forest, sobbing inconsolably over its unfortunate appearance. Hunters who have tried to track the squonk claim it is incredibly difficult to find, not because it is cunning, but because it is a master of camouflage, blending perfectly with the forest floor thanks to its blotchy skin. The few accounts of successful captures end not in triumph, but in tragic absurdity. The most famous tale involves a determined pursuer who, after tracking the creature's tear-stained path, managed to corner the squonk and bag it in a burlap sack. As he carried his prize home, the weeping from within the sack suddenly ceased. Feeling a strange lightness, the hunter opened the bag to find it empty, containing nothing but a pool of warm, salty water and bubbles. The legend concludes that the squonk, faced with the ultimate shame of being observed, had simply dissolved into a pool of its own tears. This is a cryptid born not from anger or a desire to frighten, but from a deep, resonant sense of insecurity and sorrow. The squonk is a poignant symbol of self-loathing and the desire to simply disappear rather than face judgment, a uniquely sad piece of folklore that reflects a very human anxiety about not measuring up. It stands in stark opposition to the boisterous hodag, proving that American legends can be as varied as the human emotional spectrum itself, ranging from fearsome pranks to tales of profound, tear-soaked vulnerability. From the sorrowful woods of Pennsylvania, we set a course for the frigid, wind-swept waters that separate Prince Edward Island from the Canadian mainland. The Northumberland Strait may seem like an unlikely setting for a spectral drama, but for centuries, fishermen and coastal residents on both sides of the border have reported a chilling vision: a magnificent, fully rigged sailing ship engulfed in an unearthly fire, racing against the wind as it sails impossibly through the ice-choked strait. This is the legend of the Phantom Ship of Northumberland Strait, a brilliant and terrifying maritime ghost story that serves not as a simple apparition, but as a dire omen of impending death or a violent storm. The sightings are remarkably consistent. Witnesses describe a beautiful, three-masted schooner, its sails billowing as if caught in a powerful gale, yet the air around it is often eerily calm. The most haunting detail is the fire flames that leap from the deck to the top of the masts, illuminating the entire vessel in a ghostly, silent inferno. The ship moves against the current and the wind, a defiant specter defying the laws of nature. According to the lore, seeing this phantom vessel is never a neutral event. It is a harbinger of tragedy, a warning that a terrible storm is about to ravage the coast, or more personally, that a death will soon occur within the family of the witness. The stories are often tied to a specific tragic origin. One of the most popular versions tells of a ship captained by a man who was deeply in love. Upon returning from a long voyage, he was met with the false news that his beloved had been unfaithful. In a fit of heartbroken rage, he set his own ship ablaze, condemning himself and his entire crew to a fiery grave. His ghost ship is now cursed to forever sail the strait, a permanent monument to his despair and a warning of the destructive power of rash emotion. The power of this legend lies in its connection to the very real dangers of seafaring life. For communities that depended on the sea, a sudden storm could mean the loss of livelihoods and lives. The phantom ship gave a tangible, supernatural form to that ever-present anxiety. It was a way of externalizing the fear of the unpredictable ocean, a sign from the beyond that commanded respect and preparation. Unlike a monster lurking in the woods, this was a specter of the open water, a shared terror for everyone who lived by its whims. The legend persists because the sea remains a powerful and mysterious force, and the image of a ghostly ship on fire is a symbol of disaster so potent it has burned itself into the collective memory of the entire region. But if the phantom ship is a classic, atmospheric omen from the past, our next creature exploded onto the scene with the gritty, tangible immediacy of a modern-day tabloid headline. We travel now from the cold Canadian waters to the humid, bug-filled swamplands of Lee County, South Carolina, in the long, hot summer of 1988. The setting is the Scape Ore Swamp, a dense, murky area near the town of Bishopville. On a June night, a 17-year-old local named Christopher Davis was changing a tire on a lonely road bordering the swamp when his evening turned into a scene from a creature feature. As he finished, he heard a strange thumping noise from the direction of the swamp. Turning, he saw a massive bipedal creature over 7 feet tall running directly toward him. Davis scrambled into his car and frantically tried to close the door, but the beast was upon him. He described it as having green, scaly skin, glowing red eyes, and 3 long, black fingers on each hand, which it used to grip the car's window frame as it struggled to get inside. In a moment of pure terror, Davis slammed the car into gear and sped off, dragging the creature for a short distance before it lost its grip. When he arrived home, shaking, he found his side view mirror torn off and deep scratches gouged into the roof of his car. The lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp had arrived. Davis's report was initially met with skepticism, but it was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, a wave of similar sightings swept through the area. Other drivers reported a large, reptilian humanoid emerging from the swamp to attack their vehicles, leaving behind bizarre, 3-toed footprints in the mud. The local sheriff's department was inundated with calls, and the media descended upon Bishopville, turning the lizard man into a national sensation. The evidence seemed compelling. Besides the numerous eyewitness accounts, investigators found those strange 3-toed tracks, some measuring over 13 inches long, pressed deep into the soft ground. Plaster casts were made, and the prints showed a distinctive, almost dinosaur-like appearance. The phenomenon sparked a full-blown monster hunt, with armed posses of locals and curious outsiders fanning out into the swamp after dark, hoping for a glimpse of the creature. The hysteria reached such a pitch that the South Carolina House of Representatives even took time to discuss the matter, with one representative jokingly introducing a resolution to protect the elusive lizard man from being hunted. The lizard man phenomenon is a fascinating example of a modern folklore creature born in the age of mass media. It lacks the centuries-old pedigree of the Jersey Devil, but its impact was immediate and visceral. The creature's description, a giant, green-scaled humanoid felt ripped from the pages of a comic book, reflecting the popular culture of the time. Some speculated it was a misidentified bear or a large heron, while others entertained more outlandish theories, from a genetic experiment gone wrong to an alien stranded on Earth. The most enduring local theory, however, suggests a more mundane yet strangely fitting origin. In the years before the sightings, a nearby nuclear power plant had experienced a leak of water containing trace amounts of radioactive tritium. While the levels were deemed safe by officials, the idea took root in the public imagination that the radiation had mutated a local animal, or perhaps even a person, into the monstrous lizard man. This theory perfectly captures the anxieties of the late Cold War era, a fear of invisible technological forces that could fundamentally alter the natural world and create monsters in our own backyard. The case eventually cooled, but the lizard man remains a potent symbol of how folklore adapts, using the language and fears of the present day to create a new monster for a new generation. Shifting our focus from the swamps and forests of the East, the vast and varied landscapes of the American West hold their own unique and deeply atmospheric legends. Here, the mysteries are often shaped by the sheer scale and dramatic geography of the land itself, from the soaring coastal ridges of California to the deep, pitch-black veins of mineral wealth that run beneath the earth. In these contrasting environments, we find two very different West Coast phenomena. One a silent, imposing sentinel of the high peaks, and the other a mischievous, unseen presence in the world below. High above the foggy coastline of central California, the Santa Lucia Mountains rise in a series of rugged, chaparral-covered ridges. This is a land of breathtaking vistas and profound solitude, where the Pacific winds whip along the spines of the hills. For centuries, those who have ventured into these remote heights, from the indigenous Salinan people to Spanish explorers and modern-day hikers, have reported encounters with a strange and unsettling presence known as the Dark Watchers, or Los Vigilantes Oscuros. These are not monsters in the traditional sense, but silent, shadowy figures of immense stature. Witnesses describe them as tall, often 7 feet or more, dressed in long, dark cloaks and wearing wide-brimmed hats that obscure their faces. They are always seen at a distance, standing motionless on a ridgeline or a rocky outcrop, silhouetted against the sky. They never approach, never make a sound, and never exhibit any hostile intent. Their sole purpose seems to be observation. Hikers will spot one watching them from a far-off peak, only to have it vanish the moment they blink or look away. The experience is consistently described as deeply eerie, a feeling of being intently studied by something ancient and completely alien to the human world. What makes the Dark Watchers so compelling is their ambiguity. They are a psychological haunting more than a physical threat. The terror they inspire is the quiet dread of being watched in a place where you believe you are utterly alone. Some theories suggest they could be a peculiar trick of the light, a natural phenomenon known as the Brocken spectre, where a person's shadow is cast onto fog or clouds, creating a giant, often haloed figure. Yet, the consistency of the descriptions, the specific clothing, the hat, the imposing height across generations of witnesses argues for something more rooted in folklore. The legend speaks to the power of imposing landscapes to trigger a deep-seated human unease. In such vast, empty spaces, the mind may instinctively populate the horizon with a witness, perhaps to counter the overwhelming feeling of insignificance. The Dark Watchers are the guardians of the threshold, the silent overseers of the wilderness, reminding us that even in the most beautiful places, we are merely visitors. Descend from those sun-drenched ridges, however, and you enter a world of absolute darkness and constant peril. During the great mining booms of the 19th century, thousands of men, many of them experienced miners from Cornwall, England, ventured deep into the hard rock mines of the American West from California to Colorado. Their work was incredibly dangerous, performed by the faint flicker of candlelight, with the ever-present threat of cave-ins, toxic gases, and flash floods. Into this oppressive environment, the Cornish immigrants brought a comforting and crucial piece of their own folklore, the belief in the Tomanakas. These were not malicious ghosts, but small, gnome-like spirits, often described as the ghosts of departed miners themselves, who now inhabited the deepest, most remote sections of the tunnels. Dressed in traditional miners' garb, complete with tiny versions of the same tools the men used, the Tommanockers were considered mostly benevolent if highly mischievous. The primary role of the Tommanocker was to serve as an early warning system. Miners would often hear them at work, the source of their name, the distinct knocking or tapping sounds that echoed through the shafts. A knock from one area of the mine might be a friendly hello, but a sudden, frantic series of taps from the wall just ahead was a dire warning to retreat immediately, as it signified an imminent collapse. Many miners credited the Tommanockers with saving their lives, and it became a common practice to leave a small portion of their lunch, such as a piece of a pasty, as a thank offering to keep the spirits happy. Their mischief, however, was legendary. They were blamed for any small annoyances underground. A missing tool would be found in an entirely different tunnel. A candle would be mysteriously extinguished, or the sound of their laughter would echo just around the next corner. This duality made them perfect companions for the miners. They were capricious and unpredictable, much like the mines themselves, but ultimately on the side of the workers. The legend of the Tommanockers is a fascinating example of a superstition that served a vital psychological function. In an era before modern safety equipment, the miners lived with a level of daily uncertainty that is almost unimaginable. Believing that an unseen, supernatural force was looking out for them provided a crucial sense of control and comfort. The sounds they attributed to the Tommanockers were likely the normal, albeit frightening, groans and shifts of the mountain under immense pressure. By giving those sounds a friendly, intelligent source, the miners transformed a symbol of danger into a potential guardian. This folklore was so deeply ingrained that it persisted for generations, a testament to the human need to find companionship and meaning even in the most terrifying and isolated of circumstances. Together, the Dark Watchers of the Peaks and the Tommanockers of the Depths represent the two faces of the western frontier, the awe-inspiring, silent majesty above, and the communal, perilous struggle for survival below. Leaving the desolate mines and silent mountain peaks behind, our journey into American folklore takes a sharp turn into the unsettling realm of modern urban legends, where the terrors feel closer to home, often unfolding in the very suburbs and woodlands where teenagers seek adventure. These are not ancient myths passed down for generations, but stories born in the 20th century, spread through sleepovers, high school hallways, and now the internet. They tap into a more contemporary anxiety, the fear that danger lurks not in a distant wilderness, but just beyond the streetlights of your own neighborhood. And few legends embody this suburban dread more vividly than the chilling tale of the Bunny Man of Fairfax County, Virginia. The story, which gained traction in the 1970s, centers on a specific, otherwise ordinary location, a narrow, one-lane bridge over a creek on Colchester Road in the community of Clifton. According to the legend, this bridge, often covered in graffiti, is the domain of a spectral or psychotic figure. Witnesses describe a man, sometimes said to be wearing a white bunny costume, other times just seen as a shadowy figure, who haunts the area around the bridge, particularly around Halloween. His weapon of choice is not a ghostly chain or a monstrous claw, but a very real and terrifying axe. The most common version of the tale claims he was an inmate from a nearby asylum, either the infamous Lawton prison or a fictional mental hospital, who escaped during a botched transfer. The vehicle carrying him crashed, and while most inmates were recaptured, one was not. When authorities later searched the area, they found the skinned carcasses of rabbits hanging from the trees, leading to his monstrous nickname. The Bunny Man's alleged encounters are acts of sudden, shocking violence aimed at trespassers. The most frequently cited incident involves a couple parked near the bridge one night. They are allegedly approached by a figure who hurls an axe through their car window, shouting a warning about trespassing before vanishing back into the woods. Other versions claim he attacks with a hatchet or even a meat cleaver. What makes the Bunny Man so uniquely frightening is the bizarre juxtaposition of his appearance and his actions. A bunny costume is inherently non-threatening, associated with childhood and silliness. To twist that symbol into an image of pure menace creates a profound cognitive dissonance that is deeply unsettling. The legend serves as a classic cautionary tale for teenagers, a warning against seeking out secluded, lovers' lanes, and a reminder that the familiar landscape of suburbia has its own dark, hidden corners. Despite extensive investigations by local journalists finding no evidence of any such axe attacks or an escaped inmate fitting the description, the legend endures. The Bunny Man Bridge remains a destination for thrill seekers, a testament to the power of a story that is just plausible enough to send a shiver down your spine on a dark night. While the Bunny Man is a localized phenomenon tied to a single, specific landmark, our next creature is a more diffused terror, a legend that has sprouted in several different states, each with its own local flavor. From the East Coast to the Midwest, a chilling story is told about deformed, feral humanoids known as the melonheads. The core details are consistent. They are described as small, pale, sickly-looking creatures with abnormally large, hairless heads, hence their name, and often large, dark eyes. They are said to live in secluded woods or around abandoned structures, emerging at night to terrorize anyone who ventures too close. The stories are particularly popular in rural areas of Michigan, Ohio, and Connecticut, and while the creature is the same, the origin stories vary dramatically from state to state, reflecting local histories and fears. In Connecticut, particularly around the towns of Fairfield and Milford, the legend is often tied to the infamous Fairfield State Hospital, a massive psychiatric facility that closed in the 1990s. The story goes that the melonheads were once children who were subjected to cruel and unethical medical experiments, often involving hydrocephalus, which caused their heads to swell. They were kept hidden away in the hospital's tunnels or a secret ward. Eventually, a fire broke out, allowing them to escape into the surrounding woods, where they now live in a feral state, harboring a deep-seated hatred for normal people. In Ohio, around the Kirtland area, the origin shifts to an orphanage. Here, a reclusive caretaker named Dr. Crow is said to have conducted experiments on the children in his charge, again resulting in their grotesque deformities. After his death or the orphanage's abandonment, the children were set loose to fend for themselves in the dense forests of the Chagrin River Valley. The Michigan version, centered on the Felt Mansion area near Saugatuck, offers a simpler but equally tragic tale, often describing the melonheads as the inbred descendants of a reclusive family, their deformities a result of generations of isolation. Regardless of the origin, the melonheads' behavior is consistently aggressive. They are said to throw rocks at cars, chase teenagers who dare to park in their territory, and scratch at the windows of homes on the edge of the woods. The legends function as a powerful warning against exploring abandoned buildings or wandering too far into the forest after dark. They embody a very specific set of anxieties, fear of mental illness and the institutions that were once hidden from public view, fear of scientific experimentation gone horribly wrong, and fear of the social outcast seeking revenge. The melonhead is a symbol of the monstrous result of neglect and abuse, a tragic figure whose very existence is a condemnation of society's failures. Much like the Bunny Man, these stories persist because they are perfectly tailored to their environment, providing a terrifying explanation for every strange noise in the woods and every unexplained light in the distance, ensuring that the local teenagers will always have a reason to glance nervously into the rearview mirror as they drive down a dark, tree-lined road. While many creatures of folklore are bound to a single, monstrous form, some of the most terrifying legends speak of beings that wear many faces, capable of moving among us completely unseen. The fear of the shape-shifter is a primal one, rooted in the unsettling idea that the person or animal you encounter may not be what it seems. This deep-seated anxiety has taken distinct and powerful forms in different American cultures, from the moss-draped bayous of Louisiana to the sacred deserts of the Navajo Nation. First, we venture into the humid, mystical world of Cajun country, where the rhythm of life is tied to the Catholic calendar and the ever-present waters of the swamp, giving rise to the legend of the loup-garou. The loup-garou, a name derived from the French loup-garou for werewolf, is a central figure in the folklore of southern Louisiana. But this is no simple imitation of European tales. It is a story uniquely adapted to its environment and community. The loup-garou is described as a fearsome beast, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a wolf or sometimes a dog, though some accounts add more monstrous features like horns or boar-like tusks, reflecting the hybrid nature of the swamp itself. It is said to prowl the misty edges of the bayou, its howl echoing through the cypress groves, a sound that brings a particular kind of dread to those who hear it. The creature's origin, however, is not a random curse or a bite from another beast. It is almost always a direct consequence of breaking a sacred social and religious rule. According to the most traditional stories, a person becomes a loup-garou as a punishment for violating the strict observances of Lent, the 40-day period of fasting and penance before Easter. If someone fails to honor their Lenten sacrifice for 7 years in a row, the curse will befall them. For 101 days, the afflicted individual is transformed into the ravenous beast, forced to roam the swamps and feed on both animals and, terrifyingly, humans. But there is a peculiar twist to this curse, one that introduces a glimmer of hope and a powerful mechanism for social control. The spell can be broken if another person draws blood from the loup-garou during its rampage. If this happens, the curse is lifted from the first person, but it immediately transfers to the one who shed the beast's blood, who must then endure the 101 days of transformation. This intricate rule creates a powerful taboo against even speaking about the loup-garou or investigating its activities too closely, for fear of becoming entangled in its cycle of vengeance. The legend of the loup-garou served a vital function within the isolated, deeply Catholic communities of the bayou. It was a story told to enforce social order, particularly among children, encouraging adherence to religious traditions and good behavior. But its power went deeper than simple discipline. The loup-garou gave a name and a form to the very real dangers of the swamp. The threat of wild animals, the disorientation of getting lost in the labyrinthine waterways, and the fear of the unknown that lurked just beyond the safe glow of the home. It was a cautionary tale that blended faith, fear, and the environment into a single, potent narrative, a reminder that the wilderness was not just physically dangerous but spiritually perilous as well. Now we travel over 1,000 miles to the west, to the vast, awe-inspiring landscapes of the Navajo Nation, a place of deep spiritual tradition and profound respect for the natural order. Here, the concept of the shape-shifter takes on a far more serious and chilling dimension. It is crucial to approach this subject with the utmost respect, as we are discussing a belief that is not merely a spooky story, but a deeply held and terrifying reality within Navajo culture. The figure is known as the Yi-Naldlushii, which translates to "with it he goes on all fours," most commonly referred to by outsiders as a skinwalker. A skinwalker is not a cursed individual like the loup-garou, but a very deliberate and malevolent choice. In Navajo belief, it is a witch, a person who has chosen to use sacred ritual knowledge and power for evil purposes, for personal gain, or to inflict harm upon others. Through a dark and profane inversion of benevolent healing ceremonies, a skinwalker gains the ability to transform into an animal. They might take the form of a wolf, a coyote, a bear, a crow, or an owl. The transformation is said to be achieved by wearing the pelt or skin of the animal they wish to become, hence the common name. But the form is never perfect. Witnesses describe unsettling details, like the creature moving with an unnatural, almost human gait, or having eyes that glow with an intelligent, malicious light. The purpose of a skinwalker is never benign. They are agents of chaos and suffering, blamed for causing illness, spreading misfortune, and even death within the community. They are said to prowl the desert at night, peering into the windows of homes, poisoning wells, and stealing property for use in their dark rituals. Perhaps the most chilling belief is that a skinwalker can steal the identity of a person simply by making eye contact or by acquiring a piece of their hair, fingernails, or even a photograph. This level of intimate threat makes the skinwalker a potent symbol of taboo and fear. Because of this, discussing skinwalkers openly is strongly discouraged within traditional Navajo culture. To speak of them is to invite their attention, to risk drawing their malevolent gaze toward you and your family. This cultural prohibition is a protective measure, a way of maintaining spiritual hygiene and not giving power to that which seeks to cause harm. Placing these two shape-shifter legends side by side reveals how folklore adapts to serve the specific needs and fears of a culture. The Rougarou is a community-centered story, a tool for reinforcing shared religious values and explaining the dangers of a specific physical environment. The terror it inspires is ultimately manageable, bound by rules that offer a path to redemption. The skinwalker, in stark contrast, represents a threat from within the community itself, the ultimate betrayal of cultural norms and spiritual trust. Its power is not constrained by simple rules. It is a manifestation of pure, intentional evil. One is a monster created by broken promises to God, the other a monster created by a broken spirit. Together, they show us that the most frightening transformation of all may not be the physical one from human to beast, but the spiritual one from a person of good standing into a being of pure malevolence. But perhaps no haunted location in America is as famously tied to a single creative work as the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Perched high in the Rocky Mountains, this grand, white colonial revival building looks like something from a postcard with its sweeping views and elegant architecture. Yet, its stunning exterior belies a reputation as one of the most actively haunted hotels in the world, a reputation sealed forever when it became the direct inspiration for Stephen King's masterpiece of horror, The Shining. King and his wife stayed at the Stanley in 1974 on the eve of its seasonal closing. They were the only guests in the vast, echoing hotel that night. King described an eerie feeling that settled over him as he walked the empty corridors, a sense of being watched by the building itself. That night, he had a nightmare so vivid it became the entire plot for his novel, transforming the Stanley into the fictional Overlook Hotel and cementing its place in the annals of the supernatural. The hauntings reported at the Stanley are as varied as they are persistent. Many center on the hotel's original owners, Freelan Oscar Stanley and his wife, Flora. F.O. Stanley, who built the hotel in 1909 as a luxurious retreat for the Eastern elite, is often felt or seen in the billiard room and the bar, areas he particularly enjoyed in life. But it is Flora who is the most beloved ghost. Her spirit is most active in the ballroom, a room she adored. Guests and staff have reported hearing the faint, cheerful strains of a piano playing late at night, a sound that, upon investigation, always stops, leaving the room empty and silent. Flora is also said to gently touch guests or rearrange items in rooms, a benign, almost maternal presence watching over her beloved hotel. Other spirits are less peaceful. Room 401 is notoriously known as the Haunted Honeymoon Suite, where the ghost of a former housekeeper named Mrs. Wilson is known to unpack guest suitcases and hang their clothes neatly in the closet, a gesture that can be more unsettling than helpful. Children's laughter and the sound of running feet are frequently heard in the hallways, particularly on the 4th floor, which was once a servant's quarters and is believed to be haunted by the children of hotel employees from decades past. The most famous story involves a former night watchman who reported hearing a party in the closed ballroom. When he went to investigate, he found the room full of elegantly dressed guests from a bygone era. As he approached, the entire scene vanished before his eyes. The Stanley's power comes from this layered history. It isn't just one ghost, it's an entire community of spirits from different eras, all seemingly coexisting within the beautiful, isolated hotel, a place where the veil between the past and present feels impossibly thin. From the personal hauntings of a Colorado hotel, we turn to a curse that gripped the highest office in the land, a pattern of death so strange and consistent it seemed to defy coincidence. This is the curse of Tippecanoe, also known as Tecumseh's curse or the 0-year curse. The story begins in 1811 with the Battle of Tippecanoe in the Indiana Territory. The governor of the territory, William Henry Harrison, led a force against a confederation of Native American tribes led by the Shawnee brothers, Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa, known as the Prophet. Tecumseh was away gathering more allies, and Tenskwatawa, against his brother's orders, launched a premature attack on Harrison's camp. Harrison's forces ultimately won the battle, but it was a bloody and costly affair that shattered the tribal confederation's immediate power and embittered Tecumseh. According to legend, it was Tenskwatawa, a powerful spiritual leader, who placed a curse upon Harrison and future White House leaders, proclaiming that Harrison would not win the presidency, or if he did, he would die in office. Furthermore, the curse decreed that every 20 years, every president elected in a year ending in 0 would share the same fate. The curse's power seemed to lay dormant until 1840, when William Henry Harrison, now an elderly war hero, ran for president with the slogan, "Tippecanoe and Tyler too." He won the election, becoming the first president to be elected in a 0 year. On his inauguration day, March 4th, he delivered an incredibly long inaugural address in the cold rain without a hat or coat. He caught pneumonia and died just 31 days into his term, becoming the first president to die in office and the first victim of the alleged curse. The pattern then held with an eerie and tragic precision. Abraham Lincoln, elected in 1860, was assassinated in 1865 during his second term. James Garfield, elected in 1880, was shot by a disgruntled office seeker in 1881 and died after a long struggle. William McKinley, elected for his second term in 1900, was assassinated in 1901. Warren G. Harding, elected in 1920, died of a suspected heart attack or stroke in 1923 while still in office. Franklin D. Roosevelt, elected for an unprecedented third term in 1940, died of a cerebral hemorrhage in 1945. Finally, John F. Kennedy, elected in 1960, was assassinated in 1963. For over a century, the curse seemed an inescapable facet of American political life, a dark shadow over the democratic process. The pattern was so stark that by the time Ronald Reagan was elected in 1980, the curse was a major topic of public discussion. Then, in 1981, just 69 days into his presidency, Reagan was shot by John Hinckley Jr. The bullet lodged inches from his heart, but unlike his cursed predecessors, Reagan survived. He famously joked to his wife, "Honey, I forgot to duck," displaying a resilience that seemed to break the curse's spell. When George W. Bush, elected in 2000, also survived his terms despite multiple threats, the curse was widely considered to be broken. The curse of Tippecanoe stands as a fascinating example of how humans find patterns and meaning in tragedy. While historians dismiss it as a compelling but ultimately random coincidence, its power as a story is undeniable. It connects a moment of historical conflict to a long line of national trauma, creating a narrative that suggests the past is never truly buried, and that actions taken on a distant battlefield can echo through the White House for generations. But if curses and hotel hauntings feel like grand historical dramas, our next tales bring the terror crashing back down to the most local of levels, to the specific bridges and backroads where teenage legends are born. These are the stories whispered at sleepovers and used to dare friends to drive down a dark lane, and they feature two of the most bizarre and frightening bridge-dwelling monsters in American folklore. First, we travel to the warm, sprawling city of San Antonio, Texas, where the legend of the Donkey Lady has curdled the blood of residents for generations. Her story is one of profound tragedy turned into relentless vengeance. The most common version begins with a horrific family accident. A woman and her husband were driving across a remote bridge, often identified as the Applewhite Bridge or Elm Creek Bridge, with their children in the backseat. A terrible crash occurred and the car burst into flames. The husband and children perished, but the woman survived, though she was horrifically burned. The fire mutilated her beyond recognition, melting her fingers together so that her hands resembled donkey hooves and twisting her face into a long, anguished muzzle. After being shunned by society due to her monstrous appearance, she retreated into the wilderness, her mind shattered by grief and pain, and she became the Donkey Lady. Now she is said to haunt the very bridges where her life was destroyed. Witnesses describe a spectral figure, a hunched hybrid of woman and donkey, with glowing red eyes and those distinctive hooved hands. She is often heard before she is seen, her mournful braying echoing through the night, a sound that is both pitiable and terrifying. Her encounters are acts of pure, focused rage. She is known to leap onto the hoods of cars as they cross her bridge, scratching at the windshield with her hooves and screaming in fury at those who have trespassed on her domain of sorrow. Some versions of the tale claim she sets upon cars with rocks, while others say she chases pedestrians, her tragic past having been completely consumed by a desire to inflict her pain on others. The Donkey Lady is a deeply sympathetic monster, her origin rooted in an unimaginable loss. Her legend serves as a stark warning about the dangers of the road, but also as a chilling reminder of how grief, left to fester in isolation, can transform into something monstrous and predatory. Journeying northeast from Texas, we find a similar, yet far more aggressive bridge haunter in the suburbs of Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. In Prince George's County lies a secluded, wooded road that crosses over a branch of the Anacostia River. This is the home of the Goatman, a creature whose name only hints at the terror it inspires. Described as a hulking, bipedal beast with the muscular body of a man and the head and legs of a goat, often carrying a double-bladed axe, the Goatman is no tragic figure. It is a pure hunter. The origin stories for this creature are varied, reflecting different modern anxieties. One popular tale claims the Goatman was a gentle, elderly scientist who worked at a nearby agricultural research station, the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. According to this version, an experiment on goats went horribly wrong, mutating the scientist into a monstrous half-goat hybrid that then escaped into the surrounding forest. A darker, more cynical origin story suggests the Goatman is the vengeful spirit of a goat farmer who lost everything. The tale goes that local teenagers seeking thrills would drive out to his property and harass him and his animals. One night, their pranks went too far and they caused a fire that killed his entire herd. Enraged and driven mad by the loss, the farmer took up an axe and murdered the teenagers. Afterwards, he retreated into the woods, his mind and body somehow merging with the remains of his goats, becoming the creature that now stalks the very same teenagers who venture into his territory. Unlike the mournful Donkey Lady, the Goatman's behavior is intensely predatory. It is most famous for attacking cars parked in the secluded lovers' lanes near its bridge, using its axe to chop at the roofs and hoods of the vehicles. It is also said to lurk beneath the bridge, leaping out to terrorize anyone who dares to walk across it on foot. The legend functions as the ultimate anti-trespassing warning for local youths, a story designed to keep them away from dangerous and secluded areas after dark. The Goatman's axe makes the threat feel immediate and violent, a far cry from a ghostly apparition. It is a monster of pure physical menace, a creature born from fears of scientific hubris and the potential for violent retribution from those we have wronged. Together, the Donkey Lady and the Goatman prove that you don't need a haunted hotel or a presidential curse to find a lasting American mystery. Sometimes the most potent terrors are waiting just on the other side of a familiar local bridge. From the violent legends of bridge-dwelling monsters, we now drift into the realm of more ethereal, sorrowful phantoms, stories not of axes and claws, but of loss and unresolved journeys. These are the tales of the vanishing hitchhiker, an archetype found across the globe, but given a uniquely American flavor in two particularly poignant legends. The first is perhaps the most famous ghost story to ever emerge from the city of Chicago, a spectral figure as iconic as the skyline itself. Her name is Resurrection Mary, and her story is one of a single, tragic night that has echoed for nearly a century. The narrative, set in the 1930s, always begins with a dance. A young, beautiful woman with blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, dressed in an elegant white party dress, is dancing at the O. Henry Ballroom, now the Willowbrook Ballroom, in the suburb of Willow Springs. She is full of life, a vision of youth and innocence. On this particular night, she has a quarrel with her date and, in a fit of anger or sadness, decides to leave the ballroom alone. She begins the long, cold walk home down Archer Avenue, a major road that cuts through a landscape of cemeteries and forest preserves. It is on this lonely road that a driver, always a young man, spots her. She is shivering in her thin dress and he offers her a ride. She gets into the car, quiet and seemingly sad, and gives him her address, directing him to continue down Archer Avenue. As they drive, she remains mostly silent, sometimes pointing out a landmark or two. As the car approaches the iron gates of Resurrection Cemetery, the story takes its chilling turn. The girl suddenly becomes agitated or simply says, "This is where I get out." The driver, confused and concerned, pulls over near the cemetery gates. Before he can protest, the young woman opens the door and steps out into the night, but she doesn't walk away. In an instant, she simply vanishes, leaving the car seat empty. Sometimes the driver reports seeing her form pass straight through the locked cemetery gates. Other versions claim the driver, spooked, goes to the address she gave him, only to be told by an elderly woman that he has just described her daughter, Mary, who was killed years ago in a car accident on her way home from a dance. She is buried in Resurrection Cemetery, and the family often places her dancing shoes on her grave. The legend is so pervasive that Archer Avenue is considered one of the most haunted roads in America, with countless reports over the decades of drivers picking up the ghostly girl in white, only to have her disappear as they near her final resting place. While Resurrection Mary is a figure of urban legend with a specific tragic backstory, our next phantom traveler is a more enigmatic and universally heartbreaking apparition. In the rural landscapes of Portage County, Ohio, and in similar tales from other regions, another kind of hitchhiker appears, the crying boy. This legend lacks the detailed narrative of Mary. It is a simpler, more primal image. Motorists traveling on secluded backroads late at night report seeing a young boy, often between 5 and 10 years old, standing alone by the side of the road. He is usually described as wearing simple, outdated clothing like short pants and a collared shirt, and he is always weeping inconsolably. His head is often bowed, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Feeling compassion and alarm, a driver will stop and ask the child what is wrong and where his parents are. The boy, through his tears, will sometimes mumble an address or simply ask for a ride home. The kind-hearted driver lets him into the car, and the boy sits quietly in the back seat, his crying eventually subsiding into sniffles. The driver follows the boy's directions, turning down increasingly remote country lanes. At some point, the driver will glance in the rearview mirror to check on his young passenger, only to find the back seat completely empty. The boy has vanished without a sound. Unlike the Resurrection Mary story, the disappearance of the crying boy is not the end of the tale. It is merely the beginning of a deeper mystery. The driver, now deeply unsettled, often continues to the address the boy provided, driven by a need for answers. What they find is never a happy home. Sometimes they find the charred remains of a house that burned down years ago, a fire in which a young boy tragically perished. Other times they might knock on the door of a still-standing home, only to be met by a grieving parent who explains that their son was killed in a hit and run on that very road years earlier. The appearance of the crying boy is not just a random ghost sighting, it is interpreted as an omen. His spectral presence is often reported just before or after a local tragedy involving a child, a sign that his restless spirit is connected to a cycle of sorrow in the area. He is a symbol of unprotected innocence and sudden, violent loss, a ghost whose very existence serves as a perpetual reminder of a specific, devastating grief that the land itself has not forgotten. Placing these two hitchhiker tales side by side reveals the different emotional textures of American folklore. Resurrection Mary is a classic, almost romantic tragedy. Her story is tied to a specific location and a clear narrative, a young life cut short on the way home from a joyous event. She is a ghost trapped in a single moment, forever reliving her last journey. The crying boy, in contrast, is a more abstract and pervasive fear. He represents the ultimate vulnerability of a child and the profound dread of every parent. His legend is less about a specific event and more about the general terror of a child lost, hurt, or alone in the dark. Both phantoms, however, serve a similar purpose for those who encounter them. They are not typically malevolent, they are pitiful. They inspire a desire to help, a moment of human connection that is then shattered by the supernatural revelation. This pattern turns the encounter into a profound emotional jolt, one that forces the witness to confront the reality of death and the fragility of life in a way that a monstrous creature never could. These stories are not about being attacked, they are about the haunting feeling of being unable to save someone, a sadness that lingers long after the ghost has vanished from the back seat. Leaving behind the spectral highways and phantom hitchhikers, we venture now into the realm of the truly inexplicable events that left behind physical evidence but no logical explanation. Mysteries written not in whispers but in the very snow and soil. Our journey takes us across the Atlantic, not to another American locale, but to a strange occurrence in Devon, England, that would later find a bizarre echo right here in the United States. The first is the enduring enigma of the Devil's Footprints. In the early morning hours of February 8, 1855, the residents of South Devon awoke to a peculiar sight. A heavy snowfall had blanketed the countryside overnight, but it was not the snow itself that was strange. Crisscrossing the landscape was a single, continuous line of hoof-like prints, as if a creature with a cloven foot had taken a meandering, seemingly impossible journey. The prints stretched for an estimated 40 to 100 miles from the Ixie estuary to the town of Totnes, and they were not confined to the ground. Witnesses reported with astonishment that these tracks appeared to go straight up and over the high walls surrounding estates, traverse the steep, icy roofs of houses, and even march across the top of haystacks before continuing on the other side. The prints themselves were described as being about 4 inches long and 3 inches across, set in a single file line, as if made by a two-legged creature with a stride of roughly 8 inches. The sheer scale and the impossible topography of the path sent a wave of panic through the deeply religious rural population. The immediate, terrified conclusion was that the devil himself had gone for a midnight stroll through the English countryside. Of course, the rational minds of the day scrambled for a scientific explanation. Theories ranged from the plausible to the absurd. Some suggested they were the tracks of a badger or an otter, their gait perhaps distorted by the melting and refreezing of the snow. Others proposed that escaped kangaroos from a private zoo were to blame. More inventive theories involved experimental hot air balloons dragging anchoring chains that left marks in the snow, or even that a species of unknown ballooning mouse had been carried by the wind. Yet each theory fell short. No known animal walks in a perfect single file for 100 miles, scaling vertical walls and rooftops without a misstep. The balloon chain theory failed to explain the consistent, precise hoof-like shape of each impression. The event was investigated by respected naturalists and published in the Times of London, but no definitive answer was ever reached. The Devil's Footprints remain one of history's great outdoor mysteries, a testament to the fact that sometimes the natural world presents us with a puzzle that defies all conventional solutions, leaving us with only the eerie evidence of a visitor who passed in the night. But what makes this story particularly relevant to our American narrative is that a strikingly similar phenomenon was reported decades later, not in the old world but in the new. We travel now to the town of Dover, Ohio, in the late 19th century, where residents experienced their own version of the inexplicable. While less documented than the Devon event, local accounts tell of a morning after a fresh snowfall when the townspeople discovered a trail of strange, cloven footprints weaving through their streets. Like their English counterparts, these prints also displayed an unnatural ability, appearing to traverse fences and other obstacles without breaking stride. The Ohio incident lacked the grand scale of the 40-mile Devon Trail, but its impact on the small community was just as profound, sparking whispers of a demonic presence and fueling sermons for weeks. The Dover tracks serve as a fascinating footnote, suggesting that whatever caused the original phenomenon was not a singular event, but a type of mystery that could, and did, manifest in different times and places, leaving behind the same unsettling question mark in the snow. However, if the Devil's Footprints represent a physical mystery, the next event associated with Dover, Ohio, delves into the even more terrifying realm of psychological contagion. This story shifts from footprints in the snow to a compulsive movement of the human body itself, a phenomenon known as the dancing plague. While the most famous historical case occurred in Strasbourg, France in 1518, a similar, lesser-known outbreak is part of American folklore, specifically tied to Dover. The tale goes that in the 1800s, a group of people in the town were suddenly and inexplicably struck by a compulsive, uncontrollable dancing mania. Imagine the scene, a normal day disrupted by one person beginning to dance without music, their movements jerky and frantic, not born of joy but of a terrible, unstoppable compulsion. Soon another person joins in, and then another, until a small crowd is caught in the grip of the mania. They would dance for hours, even days, unable to stop, their bodies pushed beyond the point of exhaustion. Their feet would bleed, their muscles would scream in agony, and some would even collapse from heart attacks or stroke, yet the compulsion to move would not release them. Historical accounts of the European plagues describe a scene of pure communal horror, and the Dover legend captures that same terrifying energy. What could cause such a thing? Modern science points to a few possibilities. One is mass psychogenic illness, a form of mass hysteria where psychological distress manifests as physical symptoms in a group. In a highly religious and superstitious community, the fear of a curse or divine punishment could have been enough to trigger a physical response. Another, more physiological theory involves ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye and other grains, and when ingested, it can cause convulsions, spasms, and hallucinations. The chemical components of ergot are similar to LSD, and it's plausible that a contaminated food supply could have induced the involuntary muscle contractions and altered mental states that led to the dancing. The Dover event, whether rooted in a true historical incident or grown from the fertile ground of local legend, serves as a chilling reminder of the powerful and sometimes terrifying connection between the mind and the body. It shows that folklore isn't just about monsters and ghosts. It can also be about the very real, unexplainable things that can happen to human communities under pressure, when fear or poison can make bodies move against their own will, creating a plague not of disease but of desperate, endless dance. While the legends of phantom dancers and inexplicable footprints offer glimpses into localized mysteries, some of America's most enduring folktales are written not in the soil but across the night sky itself. These are the stories of enigmatic lights, luminous phenomena that have defied explanation for generations, haunting remote landscapes and captivating all who witness them. Our journey now takes us to two such iconic locations, separated by a continent but united by the same fundamental question: what are these glowing orbs that dance just beyond our understanding? First, we venture into the ancient, rolling hills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Here, overlooking the Linville Gorge, rises Brown Mountain, a modest ridge that serves as the stage for one of the most well-documented light shows in the world. For centuries, people have reported seeing strange, flickering lights floating above and around the mountain's crest. The descriptions are remarkably consistent: glowing orbs ranging in color from a pale white and yellow to a fiery red and orange that appear to pulsate, bob, and weave through the darkness. They might appear singly or in groups, sometimes hovering motionless before suddenly vanishing or darting away at impossible speeds. The first documented accounts come from Cherokee legends long before European settlers arrived. They spoke of the lights as the spirits of Cherokee women searching the mountains for their husbands and lovers lost in a great, ancient battle. Later, early German settlers in the area developed their own explanation, viewing the lights as the lantern of a ghostly slave master, eternally wandering the ridges in search of a servant who had drowned while trying to escape. The mystery entered the modern era in the early 20th century, drawing the attention of the U.S. Geological Survey. In 1922, a team of scientists concluded, somewhat dismissively, that the lights were nothing more than the headlights of distant trains or cars. This explanation, however, was promptly disproven when a massive flood swept through the region, washing out roads and railways and cutting off all electrical power for days. Yet the lights continued to appear, dancing in the darkness as they always had, proving they were not a mere reflection of human activity. This forced a re-examination and opened the door to a host of other theories. Some suggest the lights are a natural form of combustion, perhaps swamp gas or marsh methane igniting as it rises from the valleys, though the arid mountain terrain makes this seem unlikely. Others point to more complex geological causes like piezoelectricity, where pressure on quartz-bearing rocks creates electrical charges that discharge into the air. Then, of course, there are the more speculative ideas that the lights are UFOs, manifestations of earthly energy lines, or, as the original legends held, the restless souls of the departed, forever bound to the mountain. The Brown Mountain lights remain an official mystery, a designated natural heritage site whose true nature continues to elude scientists and enchant visitors who gather at overlooks like Weissman's View, hoping for a glimpse of the unexplained. Now we travel over 1,000 miles to the west, to the vast high desert of West Texas, where another legendary light phenomenon shares an uncanny resemblance. Outside the small, artsy town of Marfa, on the stark, flat plains surrounded by distant mountains, the Marfa lights have been a source of wonder and debate since at least the 1800s. Early cowboys and settlers driving cattle through the unforgiving landscape would see them and call them ghost lights, attributing them to the spirits of slain Apache warriors or the lost souls of Spanish conquistadors searching for gold. The lights themselves are described as glowing spheres, typically the size of a basketball or larger, that appear after sunset. Their behavior is what truly captivates witnesses. They can split apart and merge back together, change color from white to red to blue, and perform elaborate, seemingly intelligent maneuvers, darting, dipping, and racing across the horizon with an agility that defies any known aircraft. Just as with the Brown Mountain lights, the search for a rational explanation has been intense. The most common skeptical argument is that the Marfa lights are merely misidentified car headlights from United States Highway 67, which runs through the area. Yet, like their Carolina counterparts, this theory has significant flaws. Historical accounts predate the automobile by decades, and witnesses consistently report the lights behaving in ways that headlights simply cannot. such as moving against the flow of traffic, soaring high into the air, or appearing in areas far from any road. Scientific investigations have proposed alternatives, including atmospheric plasmas, static electricity discharges similar to ball lightning, or complex mirages caused by temperature inversions layering hot and cold air, which can distort and magnify distant light sources. The town of Marfa has fully embraced its mysterious heritage, building an official viewing platform where tourists and researchers can gather each night. Whether you see a faint, bobbing glow or a spectacular display of otherworldly acrobatics, the experience is profoundly affecting. These are not stories confined to the past. They are living phenomena occurring night after night, challenging our perception of the possible and reminding us that some of America's greatest mysteries are not hidden in the ground, but are illuminated against the dark canvas of the sky, waiting for anyone brave enough to look. But the eerie lights of Marfa and Brown Mountain are impersonal phenomena, cosmic mysteries that watch us with a detached, celestial indifference. Our journey now takes us into a far more intimate and terrifying realm of folklore, where the monsters are not distant lights or spectral hitchhikers, but grotesque reflections of the darkest corners of the human soul. We travel into the ancient, snow-shrouded forests of the Algonquian peoples, a cultural group spanning from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic coast, where two of the most profoundly unsettling creatures in all of mythology were born, the Wendigo and the Pukwudgie. These are not simple beasts, they are embodiments of fundamental taboos and warnings, each representing a different, chilling aspect of the relationship between humanity and the natural world. The legend of the Wendigo is perhaps the most terrifying concept in all of North American folklore, a horror that is as much psychological as it is physical. It originates with tribes like the Cree, Ojibwe, and Algonquin, who lived in the vast, unforgiving boreal forests where winter could bring starvation. The Wendigo is not a species or an animal, it is a malevolent spirit, a force of insatiable greed and consumption that possesses a human being. The transformation is almost always triggered by the most extreme circumstance, famine. In the depths of a harsh winter, when a person or a group is facing certain death by starvation, the ultimate taboo is broken: cannibalism. It is this act of consuming human flesh to survive that opens the door for the Wendigo spirit to enter the soul. Once possessed, the individual undergoes a horrific physical and spiritual metamorphosis. The human form withers away, becoming a gaunt, emaciated monstrosity towering over the trees. Its skin stretches taut over its bones, pulled back into a perpetual skeletal grimace. Its eyes sink deep into their sockets, glowing with a feral, hungry light. Often described as having long, yellowed claws and decaying, animal-like features, the Wendigo's most chilling characteristic is its smell, the stench of death and corruption, said to be so potent it can be detected on the wind long before the creature is seen. But the physical transformation is secondary to the spiritual one. The victim's humanity is utterly erased, replaced by an endless, burning hunger for human flesh. This hunger is a curse, a cosmic punishment. No matter how much it eats, the Wendigo is never full. Its consumption only fuels its emptiness, driving it into an eternal, frantic hunt. It is the literal embodiment of the idea that greed consumes the greedy, that in satisfying a desperate need through taboo, you lose everything that made you human and become the very source of your own eternal torment. The Wendigo was a powerful cautionary tale for communities living on the knife's edge of survival, a stark warning against the selfishness that could destroy the social bonds necessary for collective life. To even speak of it was to risk attracting its attention, making it a story told in hushed tones around the fire, a reminder that the greatest monster might not lurk in the dark woods, but within the heart of a desperate person. In stark contrast to the colossal, soul-consuming horror of the Wendigo, the folklore of the Wampanoag and other coastal Algonquian peoples gives us a creature of a very different, yet equally dangerous, nature, the Pukwudgie. Where the Wendigo represents the terror of vast, empty spaces and existential hunger, the Pukwudgie is a master of the intimate, localized ambush. These beings are described as small, troll-like creatures standing between 2 and 3 feet tall, with large, smooth, gray-skinned bodies, large ears and fingers, and faces that resemble a human's but are somehow off, bearing a mischievous and often malevolent expression. They are not spirits of possession but physical entities, living in the wild, rocky places of New England, particularly in areas like the Freetown Fall River State Forest in Massachusetts, which is steeped in their legend. Pukwudgies are complex figures embodying a dangerous duality. They are known to be mischievous tricksters, playing pranks on humans that range from the annoying to the sinister. They might lead hikers off a trail with disembodied voices, mimic the cries of a loved one to lure someone into a swamp, or simply make objects disappear from a campsite. They are said to be skilled hunters with bows and arrows tipped with a potent poison, but their playful nature can turn to outright malice in an instant. They are known to be vengeful, holding grudges against those who disrespect their territory or speak of them lightly. Their most feared abilities include the power to become invisible at will, to use magic to confuse and disorient their victims, and to create fire to harass people. Most terrifyingly, they are said to kidnap children and adults alike, pushing their victims off high cliffs or ledges to their deaths, all for their own inscrutable amusement. The Pukwudgie serves a different purpose than the Wendigo. It is not a symbol of a broken taboo, but a guardian of a specific place. They are the protectors of the wilderness, punishing those who are arrogant, disrespectful, or who venture too deep into the wild without the proper reverence. In modern times, the legend has seen a resurgence, with many people reporting encounters in the forests of New England, describing feelings of being watched, hearing strange laughter, and even seeing the small, gray-skinned creatures darting between the trees. While the Wendigo is a cautionary tale about internal human failing, the Pukwudgie is a warning about external consequences. It teaches respect for the land and its unseen inhabitants, reminding us that the natural world is not a passive backdrop for our adventures, but a domain with its own rules and rulers, some of whom are small, gray, and should not be trifled with. If the legends of the Wendigo and Pukwudgie represent terrors born from the wild, untamed landscape, our next destination proves that some of the most profound evil can be cultivated behind the elegant facades of civilization itself. We travel now to the vibrant heart of New Orleans, to the corner of Royal and Governor Nichols streets in the French Quarter. Here stands a beautiful 3-story mansion with a wrought iron balcony, a picture of antebellum grace. But this is the Lalaurie Mansion, a name that has become synonymous with true historical horror, a place where the line between human cruelty and supernatural vengeance is permanently blurred. The story begins with Madame Delphine Lalaurie, a wealthy, socially prominent Creole woman in the 1830s. To New Orleans society, she was the epitome of refinement, hosting lavish parties in her luxurious home. But behind closed doors, she was a monster. The first whispers of her brutality surfaced in 1833, when a neighbor witnessed Lalaurie chasing a young enslaved girl with a whip. The child, terrified, climbed onto the roof to escape, lost her footing, and fell to her death. The public outcry was significant enough for Lalaurie to be fined, and she was forced to sell the 9 enslaved people she owned at the time. However, in a twist of grim irony, her family secretly repurchased them and returned them to her control, allowing the atrocities to continue unseen. The full, horrifying truth was exposed on April 10, 1834, when a fire broke out in the Lalaurie Mansion's kitchen. As neighbors and firemen rushed to help, they forced their way into the attic and discovered a secret chamber of horrors. They found 7 enslaved people, barely alive, chained to the walls in grotesque positions. They were victims of unspeakable torture and crude medical experiments. One woman had her arms and legs broken and reset at unnatural angles to resemble a crab. Another had a hole drilled into her head with a crude trepanning tool. Bodies were found in various states of mutilation. The discovery ignited a mob that stormed the mansion, though Madame LaLaurie and her husband managed to flee New Orleans, never to face justice. The paranormal activity reported at the mansion since that day is as violent and tortured as its history. For nearly 2 centuries, owners, tenants, and tourists have reported blood-curdling screams emanating from empty rooms, the apparitions of mutilated figures wandering the halls, and the phantom smell of smoke and burning flesh. Objects are thrown by unseen hands, and chilling cold spots manifest without cause. The haunting is not a subtle, ghostly presence, it is a raw, screaming wound in time. The legend suggests that the energy of the suffering endured within those walls was so immense that it saturated the very bricks and mortar, creating a permanent echo of agony. The LaLaurie mansion stands as a terrifying testament to the idea that some actions are so heinous they can poison a location forever, ensuring that the victims' stories are never forgotten, replaying their torment for anyone who dares to listen. From the grand, society-driven evil of New Orleans, we journey north to a much smaller, more ordinary-looking house in Atchison, Kansas, a town already renowned for its hauntings. The Sally House, a simple 2-story white frame home, presents a different kind of haunting, one that is intensely personal, aggressive, and strangely focused. Its story begins not with a documented history of cruelty, but with the tragic death of a child. In the early 1900s, the story goes, a young girl named Sally suffered from severe abdominal pain. A doctor was called to the house to perform an emergency appendectomy right on the kitchen table. Tragically, something went terribly wrong, and Sally died on the table before the surgery could be completed. It is her angry, confused spirit that is believed to be the primary force within the house. The modern haunting came to national prominence in the 1990s when a young couple, Deborah and Tony Pickman, moved into the home. Almost immediately, they began experiencing bizarre phenomena centered on Tony. It started with small, mischievous acts. His belongings would go missing, only to be found in absurd places. But the activity quickly escalated into something far more sinister. Tony reported being scratched, slapped, and pushed by an invisible force. Deep, bleeding scratches would appear on his body, often in sets of 3. On one terrifying occasion, a pair of sewing scissors flew off a counter and stabbed him in the back. The entity seemed to have a particular aversion to him, while often leaving Deborah completely untouched. The Pickmans, desperate for answers, invited paranormal investigators to document the activity. What they captured was chilling. Electronic voice phenomena recordings seemed to capture the faint voice of a little girl. Photographs showed strange anomalies and misty forms. Most famously, during an investigation, a news photographer captured an image of what appears to be a spectral, glowing figure of a young girl standing on the staircase. The haunting followed classic poltergeist patterns, with objects moving, doors slamming, and fires inexplicably starting in the trash can. Unlike the residual, tragic energy of the LaLaurie mansion, the Sally House entity seemed intelligent and interactive, capable of responding to questions through rapping sounds and directing its rage specifically at the male presence in the home. Some theories suggest that Sally, having died in pain and fear during a medical procedure performed by a male doctor, now directs her lingering trauma and anger at all men. The Sally House remains a focal point for paranormal researchers, a case that combines the heartbreak of a lost child with the terrifying volatility of a powerfully focused poltergeist, proving that a haunting need not have a grand, historical scale to leave a lasting mark of fear. From the tortured spirits of haunted houses, we now turn to legends of greed and ambition, where the objects of desire themselves seem to be imbued with a malevolent will. These are stories not of ghosts but of curses where immense wealth comes with an unimaginable price tag, a lesson written in misfortune and blood. Our journey first takes us from the depths of the earth to the glittering display cases of a world-famous museum, to confront one of the most infamous cursed objects in history, the Hope Diamond. The story of this 45-carat deep blue gem begins not in a jewelry store, but in the sacred quiet of a Hindu temple. Most versions of the legend claim the diamond was originally one of the eyes of a statue of the goddess Sita in India. Sometime in the 17th century, a French merchant and traveler named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier is said to have stolen the stone, prizing it from the idol itself. This act of sacrilege, according to the tale, unleashed a curse that would follow the diamond for centuries. Tavernier's own fate is the first chapter in this saga of misfortune. After selling the diamond to King Louis XIV of France, he reportedly lost all his money and died in obscurity, his body allegedly being torn apart by wolves, a fittingly brutal end for a man accused of such a blasphemous theft. The diamond, now part of the French crown jewels, became known as the French Blue. Its ownership by the Bourbon monarchy seemed to coincide with a dramatic decline in their fortunes. King Louis XVI and his queen, Marie Antoinette, both met their end at the guillotine during the French Revolution, a bloody event that saw the royal jewels looted. The diamond vanished, only to reappear decades later in London, recut into its current, smaller, brilliant shape to disguise its origins. It was here that it gained its famous name from a British banker named Henry Philip Hope who purchased it. While the Hope family itself did not suffer immediate, dramatic tragedies, their financial empire eventually crumbled, leading to the sale of the gem. The 20th century is when the legend of the curse truly solidified in the public imagination, fueled by sensational newspaper reports. The diamond passed through the hands of a series of wealthy owners, each seeming to encounter a wave of bad luck. A Turkish sultan who owned it was deposed. An American socialite, Evelyn Walsh McLean, bought the diamond in 1911, and her life became a catalogue of tragedy. Her first son died in a car accident, her daughter committed suicide, her husband was declared insane and committed to a mental institution, and the family fortune was lost. After her death, the diamond was sold to pay off her debts, eventually finding a permanent home at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. in 1958. The curator who arranged the donation, Harry Winston, famously sent it through the U.S. mail in a plain brown wrapper for insurance reasons. While skeptics point out that many of the tragic stories are exaggerated or lack a direct connection to the diamond, the pattern is undeniably compelling. The curse of the Hope diamond serves as a powerful metaphor for the corrupting influence of greed, and the idea that wealth acquired through theft or exploitation carries a spiritual stain, a karmic debt that must eventually be paid. If the Hope diamond represents a curse contained within a single, beautiful object, our next legend involves a curse spread across an entire landscape, protecting a treasure that has driven men to madness and death for over a century. We travel now to the searing heat of the Arizona desert, to the brutal, beautiful, and aptly named Superstition Mountains east of Phoenix. This is the domain of the legend of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. The story centers on a German immigrant prospector named Jacob Waltz, who, in the 1870s, was said to have discovered an incredibly rich gold vein in these treacherous mountains. The lore claims the mine was originally found by the Peralta family from Mexico, who were ambushed and massacred by Apaches while transporting gold out of the area, their treasure and the mine's location lost. Waltz, according to different accounts, either found the mine himself or was led to it by a surviving member of the Peralta family whom he later killed to keep the secret. Waltz lived a quiet, secretive life in Phoenix, occasionally turning up with high-grade gold ore to pay for his supplies, but he never revealed the location of his source. On his deathbed in 1891, he supposedly gave a cryptic, incomplete set of directions, a map that has fueled the imaginations of thousands ever since. The mine was described as a rich vein of gold so pure it could be pried from the rock with a knife, located in a region so rugged and disorienting that finding it again was nearly impossible. But the legend includes a crucial, chilling element: the mine is cursed. It is said to be protected by the spirits of the murdered Peraltas or by the Apache warriors who consider the Superstition Mountains sacred ground. This curse, much like the one on the Hope Diamond, is said to bring misfortune, insanity, and death to anyone who seeks the treasure with greed in their heart. The history of the search for the lost Dutchman's mine is a long and deadly one, providing ample, grim evidence for the curse's power. Since the 1890s, an estimated dozens of people have vanished or died under mysterious circumstances while searching for the mine. Some have succumbed to the brutal environment itself, dehydration, heat stroke, or fatal falls in the labyrinthine canyons. Others have met more violent ends. In the 1930s, a man named Adolf Ruth went missing on a highly publicized expedition. His skull was later found with 2 bullet holes in it, though his decoded notes seemed to indicate he believed he had found the location. There have been stories of prospectors being found dead, their bodies riddled with arrows or bullets, their maps missing. The tales are filled with accounts of claimed jumpers killing each other, of strange lights leading searchers off cliffs, and of individuals who claim to have found the mine only to lose their minds or die before they could lead others back to it. The curse creates a self-perpetuating cycle. Each death adds another layer of tragedy and mystery to the legend, which in turn attracts new seekers, convinced they can be the one to beat the odds. The Superstition Mountains themselves seem to be an active participant in this drama. A maze of Chinese letter rock formations and box canyons where the landscape shifts with the light, making navigation a nightmare. The Lost Dutchman's curse is not about a single object, but about the destructive nature of obsession itself. It is a warning that the desire for easy wealth can blind a person to very real dangers, turning a beautiful wilderness into a deadly trap and proving that some treasures are best left lost. Sometimes the most unsettling mysteries are not ancient legends or spectral phantoms, but phenomena that erupt without warning into the heart of modern, everyday life, proving that mass fear requires no ghost or monster, only a familiar image twisted into something sinister. This brings us to one of the strangest and most psychologically fascinating chapters in recent American history, the waves of phantom clown scares. Unlike a creature confined to a specific swamp or mountain range, this terror was a migratory panic, appearing in multiple cities across the nation in distinct outbreaks, most notably in the spring of 1981. It began in the suburbs of Boston, Massachusetts, when reports started to surface of menacing clowns attempting to lure children into vans. The descriptions were chillingly consistent. Individuals dressed in full, garish clown regalia, often with white face paint and colorful wigs, driving plain, unmarked vans. They were not seen at circuses or birthday parties, but in the most mundane of places, near school bus stops, in grocery store parking lots, and cruising slowly through quiet residential neighborhoods. The panic spread through Boston with breathtaking speed, fueled by a potent combination of local news reports and neighborhood gossip. Parents kept their children indoors, police departments were inundated with calls. The fear was so palpable that it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every strange vehicle or odd-looking individual was instantly transformed into a potential phantom clown. What made this hysteria so powerful was its basis in a very real primal fear, the threat of child abduction. The clown costume itself became a symbol of ultimate deception, a figure associated with joy and laughter perverted into a mask for predatory intent. Yet, despite the hundreds of reports and a massive police investigation, no clowns were ever apprehended and no children were harmed by them. The entire episode seemed to be a collective nightmare, a case of mass sociogenic illness where anxiety manifested as a shared hallucination of a specific, terrifying figure. But the phantom clown did not disappear after 1981. It proved to be a resilient archetype, resurfacing with eerie regularity in different parts of the country over the following decades. There was a significant wave in Chicago in 1991, and then again in 2016, when a national epidemic of creepy clown sightings gripped the nation. This time, social media acted as an accelerant, with videos and photos of clowns lurking in woods or standing on street corners going viral, often with no verification of their authenticity. The behavior of these clowns evolved. Some were passive, simply standing and staring from a distance, while others were more aggressive, chasing people or brandishing weapons. In many cases, these were revealed to be pranks, copycats seeking notoriety, or simply trying to terrify their communities. The phenomenon demonstrates how a modern legend can be born and sustained not through oral tradition, but through media and the internet, creating a feedback loop of fear where the act of reporting the sighting fuels more sightings. The phantom clown is not a single entity, but a cultural virus, a blank canvas upon which a society can project its most pressing anxieties about safety, strangers, and the unsettling idea that danger can hide behind the friendliest of faces. From a panic born of pure psychology, we turn to a mystery that was startlingly, messily physical. In the quiet, rural community of Olympia Springs, Kentucky, in the spring of 1876, an event occurred so bizarre it seems ripped from the pages of a science fiction novel. On a clear, sunny day, while a woman named Mrs. Crouch was working in her yard, the air suddenly filled with falling chunks of fresh meat. The event lasted for several minutes, leaving a patch of ground approximately 100 feet long and 50 feet wide covered in bloody, red and brown strips of flesh. The description from witnesses was unequivocal. This was not a strange rain or an organic slime. It was identifiable meat, some pieces described as being as large as a man's hand. The immediate reaction was one of utter bewilderment. The sky was clear, with no birds in sight and no storms to explain the deluge. Naturally, the event attracted scientific curiosity. Samples of the meat were collected and sent for analysis to prominent chemists and microscopists of the day. The initial findings only deepened the mystery. Several respected scientists, including a professor from Transylvania University and a chemist from the University of Tennessee, examined the tissue and concluded it was lung tissue from either a horse or a human infant. This shocking and grisly identification, however, was hotly contested. Other experts argued it was a type of gelatinous algae, nostoc, that had fallen to earth, while another theory proposed it was the regurgitated vomit of a large flock of vomiting vultures, known scientifically as cathartids. The vulture theory suggested that the birds, having gorged themselves on a carcass, disgorged their meal while flying overhead, the chunks of meat falling to the ground in a concentrated area. While the vulture explanation is the most accepted by modern skeptics, it has significant flaws. Witnesses insisted the meat fell from a clear, empty sky, and the sheer volume and the specific, uniform type of tissue, lung meat, seems inconsistent with the mixed, partially digested contents of a vulture's stomach. The event remains an open case in the annals of the unexplained, a true one-off with no satisfactory answer. The Kentucky meat shower stands as a testament to the fact that the atmosphere itself can occasionally produce phenomena that defy all logic, a reminder that even on the most ordinary of afternoons, the heavens can open up and rain down something utterly, bewilderingly strange. From the quiet, shadowy lanes of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman did not remain a local phantom confined to the pages of Washington Irving's sketchbook. He instead mounted his spectral steed and galloped directly into the heart of American popular culture, becoming one of the most recognizable and enduring figures in our collective imagination. This transformation from literary character to bona fide icon began in earnest with Walt Disney's animated masterpiece, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, released in 1949. Disney's interpretation masterfully amplified the story's inherent chills, pairing Bing Crosby's folksy narration with animation that pushed the boundaries of terror for a family audience. The chase sequence is a tour de force of suspense, where the dark, gnarled trees of the forest seem to reach out with claw-like branches, and the thunder of the horseman's pursuit is matched only by the frantic beating of Ichabod's heart. By crystallizing the legend's most frightening elements into a vibrant, accessible format, Disney ensured that the image of the fiery-headed pumpkin hurled at a terrified schoolteacher would be seared into the minds of generations. The legend found new life and a far darker tone at the turn of the millennium with Tim Burton's gothic fantasy film, Sleepy Hollow, in 1999. Burton reimagined Ichabod Crane not as a superstitious pedagogue, but as a rational, scientifically minded constable from New York City, played by Johnny Depp. This shift created a compelling tension between Enlightenment reason and supernatural terror, a theme deeply relevant to the story's post-Revolutionary War setting. Burton's horseman, portrayed by Christopher Walken, was a brutal, feral force of nature, a remorseless killing machine with razor-sharp teeth and a tangible, terrifying physicality. The film expanded the mythos, weaving in a complex conspiracy involving the local families and giving the horseman a concrete mission: to retrieve his stolen skull. This adaptation tapped into a late 90s appetite for stylish, macabre horror, proving the legend was flexible enough to be reshaped into a visceral, effects-driven blockbuster while still retaining its core eeriness. Perhaps the most significant reinterpretation came with the television series Sleepy Hollow, which debuted in 2013. The show took the concept of adaptation to its logical extreme, merging the 18th century narrative with a modern-day apocalypse. It resurrected Ichabod Crane as a Revolutionary War soldier awoken in the 21st century, who discovers he and a present-day police lieutenant are destined to be witnesses against the coming apocalypse. The Headless Horseman was re-envisioned as one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, death itself. This bold stroke connected the local ghost story to a universal, biblical scale of good versus evil. The series wove a complex mythology around the horseman, exploring his identity, his motivations, and even giving him a voice in certain storylines. While a far cry from Irving's original tale, the show's success demonstrated the incredible potency of the central image. A headless rider is such a powerfully simple and unsettling concept that it can anchor everything from a quaint folktale to a sprawling supernatural epic. So why does this particular specter hold such a powerful grip on the American psyche? The fear goes far deeper than the simple shock of a missing head. On a primal level, the horseman represents the ultimate violation of the human form. The head is the seat of identity, consciousness, and the soul. To confront a being without one is to face an existential void, a creature stripped of personality and reason, acting on a single, relentless impulse. He is a symbol of mindless, unstoppable pursuit. Furthermore, his origin as a Hessian mercenary ties him directly to the violent birth of the nation. He is a ghost of a foreign war fought on American soil, a lingering reminder of the brutal conflict that secured independence. He embodies the fear that the past is not dead, that the traumas of war and revolution can literally rise from the grave to haunt the present. Unlike a ghost that merely moans in a castle, the Headless Horseman is an active physical threat, a hunter who chases you down on your own turf. This combination of psychological dread, historical resonance, and visceral action ensures that the thundering hooves of the Headless Horseman will continue to echo through American culture, a timeless and terrifying specter forever searching for what he has lost. While the initial wave of Mothman sightings created a local panic, the legend was forever transformed from a regional curiosity into a cornerstone of modern paranormal lore by the work of one man, author and journalist John Keel. Arriving in Point Pleasant in late 1966 to investigate the reports for a magazine article, Keel found himself drawn into a vortex of bizarre occurrences that went far beyond a single winged creature. His book, The Mothman Prophecies, published in 1975, presented a theory so expansive it redefined the entire phenomenon. Keel proposed that the Mothman was not an isolated monster, but one component of a much larger and more sinister pattern of events. He introduced the concepts of ultra-terrestrials and windows, suggesting that our reality occasionally intersects with another, allowing these intelligences to cross over. These entities, he argued, are manipulative and immoral, feeding on human emotion and orchestrating events in ways that defy logic. Keel meticulously documented what he termed high strangeness, a state where the normal rules of reality seemed to break down. In Point Pleasant, the Mothman sightings were inextricably linked to other paranormal activity. Witnesses reported encounters with the infamous men in black pale, awkward figures in outdated suits who drove vintage cars and intimidated people into silence. There were numerous UFO sightings, poltergeist activity in homes, and strange phone calls where recipients would hear electronic buzzing or voices delivering cryptic warnings and predictions. Keel wove these threads together, suggesting they were all part of a single, coherent tapestry of manipulation. The Silver Bridge collapse, in this view, was not merely foreseen by the Mothman, but was perhaps somehow influenced or even caused by these unseen forces, a catastrophic event designed to generate a massive outpouring of human fear and grief. This complex paranoid vision was distilled for a mass audience in the 2002 film adaptation, The Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere. The film takes significant creative liberties, framing the story through the eyes of a modern-day journalist played by Gere, who is drawn to Point Pleasant after the death of his wife. It focuses heavily on the eerie phone calls and the sense of impending doom, capturing the psychological terror of Keel's theories rather than a literal monster movie. While it simplifies the book's more outlandish claims, the film's atmospheric dread and its central question, what if these events are connected and what if they are trying to tell us something, has successfully translated the core unease of the Mothman legend to a new generation. It presented the creature not as a physical beast to be hunted, but as a symbol, a harbinger woven into a web of synchronicity and unexplainable coincidence. The enduring legacy of this modern mythology has fundamentally reshaped the town of Point Pleasant itself. What was once a source of fear and tragedy has been transformed into a unique cultural identity and a thriving tourist economy. The town fully embraces its famous cryptid, hosting an annual Mothman festival that draws thousands of enthusiasts from around the world. The streets fill with vendors selling merchandise, guest speakers discuss paranormal topics, and a life-sized statue of the Mothman, with its great wings spread and red eyes gleaming, stands as a permanent landmark in the town square. The former TNT area, the epicenter of the original sightings, is now a destination for curious visitors and paranormal investigators hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature for themselves. The Mothman Museum, a labor of love by local historians, preserves newspaper clippings, eyewitness accounts, and props from the film, offering a comprehensive look at the entire saga. This transformation from a community gripped by terror to one that celebrates its mysterious past is a fascinating study in how folklore evolves in the modern age. The Mothman is no longer just an omen of disaster. It has become a symbol of resilience and a source of local pride. The phenomenon also pushed paranormal investigation beyond simple ghost hunting into a more complex realm. Keel's ideas about interconnected phenomena forced researchers to consider the bigger picture, to look for patterns linking creature sightings, UFO activity, and psychic events. The Mothman legend, therefore, stands as a crucial bridge between classic American monster stories and the contemporary, multifaceted world of high strangeness, where the line between a physical creature and a multidimensional psychological phenomenon becomes beautifully and terrifyingly blurred. But the legend of the vanishing hotel is merely one thread in the vast, tangled tapestry of mystery that shrouds the great dismal swamp. To truly understand its haunting atmosphere, one must look beyond the phantom architecture to the very real human drama that has unfolded within its shadowy confines. For generations, this immense wetland was not just a place of natural danger, but a beacon of hope. Long before the Civil War, the swamp's nearly impenetrable maze of waterways and islands served as a clandestine refuge for communities of Maroons, enslaved people who had liberated themselves and established hidden, self-sufficient settlements deep in the wilderness. These resilient individuals created entire worlds away from the eyes of slave catchers, living off the land and forming networks of resistance. This profound history was powerfully captured in Harriet Beecher Stowe's second novel, Dread, a tale of the Great Dismal Swamp, published in 1856. Following the monumental success of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Stowe aimed her readers' attention directly to this specific landscape, portraying it not as a mere setting, but as a character in itself, a place of both sanctuary and profound spiritual power. In the novel, the titular character, Dread, the son of a famous slave rebel, operates from the swamp's depths, emerging as an avenging prophet who uses the isolation of the morass to plan a rebellion. Stowe's work, while a work of fiction, was grounded in extensive research and brought national awareness to the swamp's role as a place of literal and symbolic freedom, a stark contrast to the oppression surrounding it. This legacy of desperate hope and relentless pursuit permeates the very soil, suggesting that the eerie sensations visitors report are not just echoes of a phantom hotel, but the lingering spirits of those who fought for their lives in this harsh but protective wilderness. This rich history of human struggle and secrecy provides a fertile ground for other, more spectral legends to take root. Beyond the grand illusion of the hotel, travelers and locals have long reported a chorus of disembodied sounds that drift through the thick air. On still nights, when the fog hangs heavy between the cypress trees, one might hear the faint, desperate whispers of voices that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Some say these are the echoes of Maroon communities communicating in hushed tones to avoid detection, their cautious conversations forever etched into the atmosphere. Others interpret them as the lost pleas of those who succumb to the swamp's very real perils, quicks, and illness or disorientation, their final moments replaying for any sensitive ear that might wander too close. These auditory phantoms are rarely distinct words, but rather a pervasive sense of being watched and listened to by an unseen congregation, a feeling that you are not alone in the absolute stillness. Adding to this disorienting sensory experience are the swamp's most famous natural yet supernatural-seeming phenomena, the will-o'-the-wisps. These flickering, ethereal lights, known scientifically as the combustion of methane gas released from decaying organic matter, have guided and misled wayfarers for centuries. To a rational mind, they are a simple chemical reaction, but when witnessed in the context of the dismal swamp, they transform into something far more menacing. These glowing orbs dance just above the dark water, hovering tantalizingly in the distance, appearing to beckon the observer forward. Folklore across cultures warns that these lights are malevolent spirits, leading tired and lost travelers off the solid path and deeper into the treacherous mire where they inevitably meet their doom. In the context of the swamp's history, they take on an even darker symbolism. For an escaped slave desperately following the North Star to freedom, the sudden appearance of a false, earthly light could mean the difference between life and death, a cruel trick of nature that could undo a perilous journey. The will-o'-the-wisp embodies the swamp's fundamental duality. It is a place of refuge but also a place of deception, a sanctuary that can, in an instant, become a trap. Together, the ghostly voices and the deceptive lights create a full-spectrum haunting, one that plays on both the ears and the eyes, immersing the visitor in an environment where nothing can be trusted, and where the past feels as present and dangerous as the sinking ground beneath your feet. That profound connection between place and spirit, between the landscape and the legend, finds a powerful echo further south in the unique cultural tapestry of the Louisiana Bayou. Here, the folklore is deeply interwoven with the rhythms of both the natural world and the spiritual calendar, giving rise to a shapeshifter that is far more than a simple monster. The rougarou, a name that twists the French loup garou into something distinctly Cajun, serves as a fascinating example of how a community uses a terrifying story to reinforce its most vital social and religious bonds. This isn't a tale told merely to scare, it's a narrative tool of remarkable sophistication, designed to maintain order and identity in an environment that could be as unforgiving as it was beautiful. The legend itself is a chilling one. Descriptions vary, but the Rougarou is typically depicted as a fearsome creature, a hulking beast with the body of a man and the head of a wolf or sometimes a feral dog. Some accounts add even more monstrous features like curved horns or the sharp tusks of a wild boar, reflecting the hybrid, unpredictable nature of the swamp itself. It is said to prowl the misty edges of the bayou, its howl a sound that brings a very specific kind of dread. But unlike werewolf legends from Europe, where a bite or a family curse might be the cause, the Rougarou's origin is almost always a direct consequence of breaking a sacred social contract. The most traditional stories state that a person transforms into the beast as a punishment for failing to honor the strict observances of Lent. If someone neglected their Lenten sacrifice, abstaining from meat, for instance, for 7 consecutive years, the curse would befall them. For 101 days, the afflicted individual would become the ravenous Rougarou, forced to roam the swamps and feed on both animals and, terrifyingly, humans. This is where the legend reveals its true genius as a mechanism of social control. The curse contains a peculiar and powerful twist. The spell can be broken, but only if another person draws blood from the Rougarou during its rampage. If this happens, the curse is lifted from the first person, but it immediately transfers to the one who shed the beast's blood, who must then endure the 101 days of transformation. This intricate rule created a powerful taboo within the close-knit, isolated communities of southern Louisiana. It wasn't just about your own behavior, it was about the collective well-being. This rule discouraged anyone from speaking too openly about the Rougarou or from investigating strange sounds in the night for fear of becoming entangled in its cyclical vengeance. Parents would tell their children to be home before dark and to behave, or the Rougarou might get them. It was a story that enforced a curfew and good behavior with a tangible local terror. For adults, it served as a potent reminder to adhere to the tenets of their deeply held Catholic faith, linking religious observance directly to the very real dangers of the world outside their doors. The legend effectively externalized the community's fears of wild animals, of getting lost in the labyrinthine waterways, of the moral decay that could come from neglecting their faith, and gave it a name and a form that could be understood and, in a way, managed through obedience. In modern times, the Rougarou has undergone a remarkable transformation, much like the Jersey Devil or the Mothman. The fear that once kept children indoors has been largely supplanted by a sense of cultural pride and commercial opportunity. The creature has been embraced as a unique symbol of Cajun identity. Today, you can attend the annual Rougarou Fest in Houma, Louisiana, a family-friendly event that celebrates the folklore of the bayou with costume contests, parades featuring giant Rougarou puppets, and live music. The beast appears on T-shirts as a mascot for local sports teams and in songs by Cajun and Zydeco bands. This commercialization might seem to dilute the legend's power, but it actually demonstrates how folklore evolves within a living culture. The Rougarou is no longer just a cautionary tale. It has become a beloved, if still slightly fearsome, icon. It represents the resilience, the uniqueness, and the rich storytelling tradition of the Cajun people. The festival, rather than banishing the monster, invites it to the party, acknowledging that this creature born of fear and faith is an inseparable part of who they are. This evolution shows that folklore is not a static relic but a dynamic force, capable of shifting from a tool of social control to a celebrated emblem of community, proving that even our darkest stories can find a new life in the light of day. From the whispering woods of Sleepy Hollow to the silent peaks watched by dark figures, from the tragic phantoms of forgotten bridges to the cursed treasures buried in the Arizona sun, our coast-to-coast journey has revealed an America that exists just beneath the surface of the everyday. We have encountered 33 stories, each a unique thread in the vast and vibrant tapestry of American folklore, proving that the strange and mysterious are not confined to any single region or era. These tales span centuries, from the colonial anxieties of headless soldiers to the modern panics over phantom clowns, illustrating that the need to populate the unknown with stories is a fundamental and enduring part of our national character. What do these bizarre narratives truly tell us about ourselves? They are far more than simple campfire scares. They are profound reflections of our collective psyche, acting as a kind of cultural subconscious. The legends of the Wendigo and the Rougarou speak to deep-seated fears of hunger and the consequences of breaking sacred social taboos. The Vanishing Hotel and the deceptive Will-O'-the-Wisps give form to our terror of losing our grip on reality in an unfamiliar landscape. The Mothman and the Curse of Tippecanoe channel our anxiety about impending disaster, a desire to find a warning sign, a pattern in the chaotic randomness of tragedy. Even the more modern legends, like the Lizard Man or the Bunny Man, tap into contemporary fears of scientific hubris and the dangers lurking in our own suburban backyards. These stories are the tools we have used for generations to explain the unexplainable, to give a name to the shadow in the corner of our eye, and to process the trauma of history, from the bloodshed of revolution to the horrors of slavery. This collection is a testament to the incredible power of place, a story like the bell which is inextricably linked to the specific soil of Tennessee, just as the Jersey Devil is a creature born from the unique isolation of the Pine Barrens. The landscape itself becomes a character in these dramas, shaping the legends and ensuring they could not have happened anywhere else. This deep connection reminds us that every town, every river, every lonely stretch of road has its own history, its own secrets, and its own stories waiting to be told. Our journey may be complete, but the map of American folklore is endless, with new mysteries emerging even as old ones are pondered. And that is where you come in. We have explored 33 of the strangest tales, but this is only the beginning. The true richness of folklore lies in its local nature, in the stories passed down in your own family or whispered about a particular landmark in your hometown. What legends are unique to where you live? Is there a haunted bridge, a local cryptid, or a strange historical event that everyone knows but nobody can quite explain? The comments section below is the perfect campfire for us to gather around. Share your own local folklore stories with the community. Let's discover together just how deep and weird this country truly is. If you enjoyed this expedition into the heart of American mystery, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. There are countless more bizarre facts and forgotten tales to uncover, and we are just getting started. Thank you for watching, and remember, the next time you find yourself on a dark road or hear an unexplained sound in the night, you might be on the verge of adding a new chapter to the story yourself.